Hey everybody, it's Master Galengeist here, bringing you my review for the anime movie Your Name. And I really enjoyed this movie. I was kind of hesitant to watch it, not because I thought it was going to be crap, but it's like whenever something's kind of talked up a lot, you're like, okay, let's manage the expectations. But I was really glad I saw it because it's a really well done and well structured movie, and the supernatural slash sci-fi kind of elements are very well handled, and they keep to their own rules throughout the movie. It doesn't kind of go crazy and haywire on what's going on with it. It keeps a consistent rule set about what kind of happens. So, who thought that would be great in a great movie? So, it's awesome to see that kind of consistency and well thought out structure and plot and characters get the praise it deserves. So we start out this movie and it's kind of confusing at first. I'm like, what the hell's kind of going on? We see this girl kind of wake up and she seems very discombobulated, like she doesn't really know where she's at or what's going on. And gets dressed to like, well, she's in the process of figuring out what's going on. And then we switch over to the next day. And it's kind of jarring, but that's the point. And because we find out that this girl, Mitsuha, wasn't really feeling herself the day before and doesn't really remember what happened. And her friends are kind of filling her in, saying that like she kind of forgot her name, acting kind of weird and strange, and she's like leafing through what's going on in her book as the teacher is explaining kind of elements of like twilight and dusklight and these kind of places of light versus dark and the kind of blending of the two. That's an important motif going throughout this movie, and it's not there to hit you over the head. It's like, ooh, okay, foreshadowing. That's kind of cool. So she's flipping through her notebook as this is kind of going on and sees that someone has written, "Who are you?" like in the middle of her notebook, and like the blank page is like, okay, that's kind of weird. And she hadn't been feeling herself. We then switch to this guy's perspective, and he kind of goes through the same thing. We see him talking to his friends, like, "You were acting kind of weird, man." And he's like, "What the hell?" We see a little bit more of Taki being different and kind of changed and what's going on there than we do, at least in the beginning, for Mitsuha. And we then start figuring out that Mitsuha and Taki have been switching places. And that it's kind of random. Granted, a couple nights during certain weeks, and they start kind of planning for what's going on because they start kind of affecting their own kind of lives. Because Mitsuha is kind of looked on as kind of the weirdo because her sister and her grandmother are dealing with the shrine and doing these kind of ancient rituals and uh, making this interesting kind of offering to the gods. Uh, and of course, her classmates think it's kind of weird and shit. And it's like, oh, okay, whatever. She's also estranged with her father, who is the mayor, and he's pretty much more focused on being reelected as the mayor. Very serious kind of Jaws-like vibes coming in here because of what he's doing to try and get elected and everything, and I actually didn't make that Jaws connection until now. I kind of like this parallel because it becomes important later on. So they're kind of planning out stuff going on, and the thing is, it was really kind of funny because Mitsuha at one point was like shouting, in her next life she wants to be this kind of cute boy in Tokyo because she hates being in the rural area of her town. And I very much identify with that. I understand being stuck in a place and a situation that you don't really kind of want to be in. And it's different if you're there by a choice and can at some point make a choice and move on. But when you're stuck there, it's like, and she wants to be in the city and doing stuff in the city. Taki, of course, he doesn't mind being in the city, but he knows how expensive it is, and it's kind of cool seeing them flip-flopping and everything. Mitsuha is going and eating all these snacks and everything, and of course, she's kind of helping out Taki's kind of feelings with this one coworker, Miki, and like helping her sew this kind of thing because this customer cut it with a freaking knife thing. It's like, what the fuck? And she kind of wants to go out, she kind of sets up this date and wants to go out with her. It's like, that's interesting. And Taki's like, fine, all right, I'll deal with this and try and make it work. But of course, it's kind of awkward and all that because Miki was kind of more into with Mitsuha being in there. It's like, okay. So it's kind of cool to see the different kind of balances where Taki then has to kind of deal with the stuff that Mitsuha is doing, while Mitsuha's also got to deal with the stuff that Taki's doing, kind of pushing back on the people being assholes to her in high school. And it's kind of cool to see how they both balance each other out. They're the main focuses and anchors of this story, and they get the most screen time. Others do kind of get some development, but I'm glad that they collectively are the ones that are focused on for this, because they get a good amount of character development. We see different kind of shifts and everything, especially with like Taki going through with the date and it being kind of a little bit different and all that, and seeing Miki's kind of reactions and all that. They're like, okay, she kind of heads off early, and then it starts going off that Mitsuha was getting ready to see this comet and everything. Okay, what's going on here? And he tries to kind of like call her and everything, but it doesn't go through, and it starts getting a little bit weird because then the body switches stop, and we see this thing, the comet and everything. Mitsuha like went and saw it, and then we see a split off. It's like, what the hell is going on with this thing? And then Taki is really kind of getting obsessed with and trying to figure out what's going on, starts drawing the landscape and everything, and decides to go on a journey to try and find where she lives. He starts going through, and of course Miki and his other kind of friend from school decide to go with him, and that's a kind of fun little road trip thing as they're having fun, and he's like, I'm trying to find this thing. But they stop at one shop, and of course the person recognizes the landscape, tells them about it, but they go and visit, and they see that it was destroyed and that like pretty much everybody was killed because as the comet was passing, it split off into a smaller fragment, it hit and destroyed it. And it's kind of crazy seeing them trying to figure out that and try and deal with that. And that's also kind of affecting what's going on, because then he tries to look at the messages that Mitsuha had left him, and they disappear from his phone. It's like, that's kind of weird. And I like how this gradually starts getting a little bit more freaky as that disappears. His memories of her start to kind of disappear, but it starts lining up with a certain spot where Mitsuha had taken this offering to this kind of guardian spirit for her town. And I like that there had been a previous kind of disaster as well. They don't remember exactly what was going on, but they continue these kind of traditions of threads and talking about time and connections that way. I really like that is a big kind of central core tenet and kind of theme going throughout of like connections and time, and how some will be connected, some will break apart, and some will be retied back together. So she had, of course, left that special kind of drink offering, as well as her sister, to the guardian spirit. And this, of course, is kind of the last kind of thing that Taki has in his head. So he goes off to find it. He's able to find it. And he finds, of course, Mitsuha's and drinks it to kind of have a connection. And he kind of slips and falls and gets kind of knocked out, but knocked back to that day when the disaster was going to occur. Because the disaster had happened 3 years previously. It's like, wow. So he's going around town. He's getting everybody together. They try and do this thing to get everybody evacuated to the high school. He tries to reason with Mitsuha's father, but it doesn't work. And their plan doesn't completely work as well. And we also see that the grandmother understands kind of what's going on, because Mitsuha has been acting differently. And evidently this is a kind of power connection, these kind of switching of bodies, because, well, termed more of like, are you dreaming now? And like, who are you? Finally figuring out what's been going on kind of with the body switching. But of course, the mayor doesn't do it, and of course, Taki's trying to go and figure out in Mitsuha's body what's going on, and they kind of converge at the Guardian site, of course, at twilight, and that's when they're able to speak with each other, trying to figure out what's going on, and this would kind of get them switched back. And they're kind of happy to see each other. And this is kind of, well, technically, not the first time that they've actually interacted, because we see that Mitsuha had gone to Tokyo and tried to figure out what was going on with the date with Taki, but of course this was 3 years in the past, and Taki didn't know her and have information about her until 3 years later. But of course, he does get her hair tie that she had and her name, but he doesn't know what to do with that information because she met him on a train randomly. It's like, wow, okay. And kind of, he's able to grab it, and he's been using that pretty much ever since. But they're trying to figure out what's going on. He tells her about what happens and tries to help her to figure out what to do. Maybe she'll have better luck, and they're trying to write each other's names on their arms before the twilight goes away. Now, granted, Taki's the only one able to write anything and before the time runs out, so they're kind of still messed up. And it really kind of sucks because Mitsuha's running by and she falls down and she finds that he had only written "I love you" on her arm, and it's like, son of a bitch. Usually I'd be like, yeah, but you gotta think ahead. I'm like, that's really a hit in the field. It's like, God damn it, that's beautiful. But I'm like, damn it, you should have wrote the name too, man. But of course, she's able to get to her father and convince him, and we find out that everything's kind of a little bit changed up. She forgets about Taki, and Taki forgets about her, and then we get 5 years into the future. Well, 5 years into the future from Taki's point, not Mitsuha's point. And we find out that the disaster occurred, but nobody was killed. And they had evacuated everybody to the high school. That's where you kind of get the Jaws kind of vibe from of, oh, the mayor's not listening to a prevalent threat. Now, granted, I understand it's like, why are you saying that a meteor is going to bust apart and kill everybody? But granted, I am a cautious man. And I would rather be like, you know what? If something's going to potentially kill everybody, I'm like, let's just move the festivities. Okay, you're saying that the school will be out of the area. All right, fine. We'll just get a better kind of view and everything and be here. And be like, okay, that's just me. I understand what you have to think of when you're trying to do those kind of evacuation things. So it's like, oh, okay, it worked, but they don't remember each other. And they don't have each other's names. And it's just like, shit. And we see that both of them have been waking up crying, and they don't know why. And they have never done a body switch ever since, and they kind of feel incomplete. Like, Taki is the one that we see being focused on in the beginning at this point, being like he's trying to find that kind of happiness. And we see other people, kind of like him connecting with his friends and all that, him trying to find a job, which I definitely identify with coming out of college, and that Miki has gotten married, and they kind of hung out a little bit, but he's just trying to find that kind of thing. And we get to him at the end, and he sees that he's on one train and that Mitsuha is on another, and they kind of recognize each other, and they're trying to run through these beautifully drawn streets trying to find each other, and they do, and at first they don't really notice each other. Well, they notice each other, but they don't really do anything, but Taki takes the initiative of, hey, do I know you? And she's like, I was about to say the same thing. And they both in unison ask each other's names. It's like, yes, that was pretty awesome. I liked how that ended. It's like, alright, they were able to make that reconnection. And just tying in with that theme of the chords and everything. And I don't care if it's kind of like sappy or kind of like romantic dreamer kind of shit. I like those kinds of things of love and hope, that these are like important themes and forces in the universe to focus on. And this by no means was an easy win for them. Okay, they knew each other and kind of fell in love with each other and then forgot about it. But yet it was so powerful, this connection between them, that they were able to find each other later on and reconnect. And you don't even really need to see what goes on later. I mean, granted, they'd have trials and tribulations, and they'd have the messy, usual kind of shit going on, but the important part was that they came back together. And I just really liked that as a theme, and that it was nice to show that love and connections and unions can transcend strange, weird, horrible, destructive things as well. And that's kind of message that I would like to see more in the world. So I really liked how it just went through. It kind of played with our kind of sense of time and kind of messing around with the linearity of what was going on and mainly information being presented, but how beautifully drawn and animated everything was, and that it kept a consistency of what was going on to draw you into the world and have you really be like, oh, okay, this seems really well done, and just kind of brings you into the believability of the world. And I like how we see both Taki and Mitsuha grow and get through this crisis and then reconnect later. And I know that they are going to be doing a live action adaptation, and it's going to be really, really hard for them to do it because they're going to try and set it in like the West, and Japan is as much of a character in this movie as Taki and Mitsuha, with the legends and the traditions of the people, as well as like Tokyo urban life versus Japanese rural life, and of course the whole comet situation and all that. And granted, it probably didn't happen, but the kind of believability of what was going on with that, you're like, oh, okay. We'll have to see how well done that's orchestrated in it. I don't know. Because usually Hollywood just buys up things and does the bare minimum to adapt great stories. And this is a great story. I'll definitely watch this again and definitely recommend this to really anyone. Now granted, it doesn't really have action, blood, guts, and dismemberment, and dark negativity, and like the pessimistic view that life is bullshit and that we all die and it's all nothing. That really isn't the message here. This is more of like figuring out how people connect and that hope of connection and that kind of positivity. So if you're into that kind of thing, a nice, well-constructed story with great visuals and good character development, I'll definitely recommend you watch this movie. So those are my opinions on the movie. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.